I understand you have a unique approach to discussing time management.
Yeah, because I don't think that the logistics of time management are anything special.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, everybody and his dog has produced a course on time management. They'll talk about batching similar tasks together, trying to do your calls at one time during the day. So for coaches, they'll leave a half an hour in the middle of the day to make sure they get some calls done in a half hour at the end of the day. And when do you do your charts? I think that kind of stuff is fairly intuitive and, in my point of view, a little bit boring to talk about. What I think is much more important is that time management in coaching is much more about, do your clients respect your time, and how to get your clients to respect your time. Because once your clients respect your time, you can really creatively craft your schedule just about any way that you want to, whatever works best for you.
And one of the things I love about what you're saying, if you want to be client-focused, is that when your client respects your time, that's a way they start respecting themselves.
Yep.
So it's really helpful to them if you can model good time management for yourself.
Yes.
Well, what do we do?
So there are a couple of places where I see, when I supervise a new coach or even a psychotherapist, even a PhD psychotherapist make these mistakes, is that there's a couple of places in the beginning, in the very first interactions you have with your client, that can train them to either think of you like an emergency room doctor who should be there at their beck and call right away, or train them to respect your time and value the work that they do with you much more from the get-go. And one of the first things has to do with how you set up the first and second appointments. Because if you give a client the exact appointment that they want right away, even if you happen to have it available, it leads them to expect that you're going to be working in their schedule. And some people have difficulty with this because they feel that, they get through the first 15 or 20 minutes on the telephone with the client, finding out what the reasons are for them calling and why now, and they make the contact, and then it comes to try to time to set up the appointment, and the client says, well, I get off of work on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock. Is it possible that we could do next Wednesday at 7? And the new life coach looks at their schedule, and 7 o'clock is wide open, and they're kind of thinking, yeah, I'll get up at 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday if you want me to, because I want clients. And they're really very tempted, especially if they've made a nice connection with that client, to say, yeah, I can definitely do that.
Like, one of the problems immediately is even asking the patient or the client what would work for them, instead of saying, I have these times available, or any of them available for you, something like that?
That can be a little bit too frustrating for the client if you present the times first.
What do you recommend?
Well, what's good is if you can get a sense of their schedule so that they feel like you are relating to them, and then present to them, well, okay, next couple of weeks it's a little bit difficult for me to work out 7 o'clock on Wednesday. I think that I might be able to do it, and then you give them a date, and I can probably do 7:30 on Wednesday the 18th or something like that. And you have them call back about a week later to confirm, tell them you have to just confirm something in your schedule, and could you check in with them mind calling you in about a week to confirm that it's still a good time for them and it's still a good time for you, and then you'll book the appointment.
What if the person says, I have a job interview in 3 days, this is really urgent, I need to get some advice urgently before I go on the job interview?
Oh, well, I have another 10 or 15 minutes now. We can talk right now. While I'm on the phone with you, we can talk for a few minutes.
You think that'll be enough? I mean, this is like the most important job interview of my life.
Well, why don't we try? And then if we have to, I can look to see what else I might have available, see if it's possible for me to work something out. Sure, honey, I'm not saying that you should be rigid about this. I'm saying this more as a principle. If someone has a genuine emergency or a genuinely urgent need, and you don't have a very strong connection with them, you don't want to frustrate them too much. To take the extreme example of that, when I was functioning as a psychologist, and I would get a call from a suicidal client, I wouldn't say, I'm sorry, I can't see you for 2 weeks. I would spend a little longer on the telephone than I normally would with a new client, and I would get them in as soon as I could.
But also, don't you think that with a suicidal patient or someone who has extreme urgency for whatever, that might not be the best patient, and maybe that's an emergency room kind of situation?
You have to make decisions about that. You really do. The principle is to make a judgment call about the level of frustration that you can impose with regards to the scheduling of the first and second appointments. In the beginning of your practice, you'll usually err on under-frustrating people, and they won't respect your time as much, but you can train people over time.
Right.
Because there's every reason for them to expect that you're going to be getting busier as time goes on, and
Right.
you'll have more of a connection with them as time goes on.
And can I back up just a second also? I love what you're saying. I think it's really super. The other thought I had is that part of what could happen there is if, as a life coach, you're sitting at the phone waiting for it to ring, instead of letting the voicemail take the message, you answer the phone, and the person expects you to be there and answering the phone when they call to make an appointment.
Right. So if you respond with immediacy to their urgent needs, you aren't giving yourself the time to access your creative brilliance and think through what they're presenting to you, think through the message, and you're not giving the client the perception that they're worthy of that thought and time and energy.
And that they have the capacity to get through an urgent moment.
It can infantilize people. It's antithetical to growth in many ways. So urgent response should really only be for urgent needs. So
Good.
That's different than saying, well, I'm never going to respond urgently, but it's only a response to urgent needs. The other thing is that if you were going to go for, let's say if it was for brain surgery, I heard Dan Kennedy say something like this. If you had to go for brain surgery, do you want to go to the doctor that's going to fit you in right away?
I don't think so.
Right.
Well, unless I'm having a hemorrhage. Right.
Yeah. So people will complain, and they'll come in for their session and they'll say, it was really annoying to me that I couldn't get an appointment sooner. But over time, they respect you more because they perceive you as a busy and competent life coach. And
Right.
they'll take what you have to say more seriously, and
Right.
the work becomes more valuable to them, and they're willing to pay you more. And that whole set of values that goes along with decommoditizing yourself also goes along with not allowing them to control your schedule like that. I think that new clients need more urgent response than established clients.
And when you say urgent now, what do you mean?
More prompt response.
Mm-hmm. So like maybe a few days or a week versus a couple of weeks.
I wish I could give you a formula, and this is something you get a sense of as you begin to work with people.
You hear the urgency in my voice.
Yeah. What I usually tell people, if you're getting calls from the yellow pages where people don't know you and they're in the middle of shopping around for life coaches and you're in a very competitive environment, remember that's not the step-ladder marketing environment that we're promoting.
Right.
But if you're just getting a call or somebody's referred by somebody, then you want to get back to them very quickly, and you probably want to get them in to see you that week if you can,
Mm-hmm.
or want to get them an appointment that week if you can. When you're working with the life coaching step-ladder business model, remember the people that are calling you have been reading your newsletters for a while.
That's right.
They've been listening to your audio touch points. They're very connected to you. You already feel like their new best friend. So what's most important there is that they get to make that initial contact on the telephone for a few minutes, and you see that you might like to work with them. Usually you'll be able to put off the first appointment for 2 weeks at least. And that'll give them time to look forward to it and think about what they want to work on, and you can tell them if they want to write to you before then, that's perfectly fine. You'll read it before the appointment. Usually you can put it off for 2 or 3 weeks, and I recommend that you do if you can.
But why? Why should I put it off for 2 to 3 weeks?
This is the foundation of your practice.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who will drop out in those 2 weeks because they'll say it's too long for them to wait, those are going to be people that are less capable and less coachable overall because they're not capable of holding their thoughts and feelings and anxieties and concerns for that longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So what will happen is you're going to build the foundation of your practice on people that are very capable and competent, the kind of upper end of the human spectrum.
So you're more likely to get paid, you're more likely to have people who are going to hang around for a while.
Yes. To get value out of coaching, you have to be the kind of person who remembers what was said,
Mm-hmm.
thinks about it,
Ruminates about it.
ruminates about it, makes plans to execute it, and can hold you in mind even when they're feeling bad inside.
Right.
The setup we're talking about with this frustration built in the very beginning screens for people who are more likely to be those kind of people. And the people who can do that are more likely to be higher income and able to pay you more, and just generally a much more satisfying way to run a practice.
And allow you to create your time the way you want it so you can have a more satisfying career.
Thank you, my marketing wife. That's definitely a good marketing point. What I would say is, for the people that are coming in through the stepladder marketing system, I would use about 2 weeks as a guideline to start with. And if you get a lot of people dropping out and you're just not making your numbers, then bring it in. Frustrate them less. If you are overly busy and you don't want to have as many appointments as you do, and you only want people who are much more proactive and much more able to tolerate
highly
frustration,
motivated.
Yeah, then you push it out a little bit. And you and I both work with a personal coach where you can't get an appointment for 6 months to a year.
Right.
And I'm like that now. You can't get an appointment to work with me for 6 months or a year. And I basically
I know, and I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
To put the last point I'd like to make about people coming in through the stepladder process is, when you install your newsletter, each newsletter is going to have a subject line. And a lot of people will come in response to one of those emails, and you'll be able to tell what email they're responding to. Of course, that's important because you want to watch what emails are getting the best response and gradually craft your emails to model that. But it's also important in terms of setting these initial parameters, because if you know they're responding to an email that's very early in the sequence, then they're likely not as bonded to you and not the kind of person who takes a very long time to hold something in mind. It's probably a little bit more of an impulsive decision, and that person might need to get in a little sooner. And if the email that they're responding to is much later, and talking about audios that they've heard, which don't go out until, the 2-week period or something like that, then you know that much more about them from the marketing process itself.
I also want to say, someone coming in early might have been looking for a long time, and you really hit it on the mark. And I'm thinking about myself. I tend to be a very enthusiastic person, and when I see something I want, I know what it is, and I would go after it sooner than later. And you know how committed I am to working on things. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't work hard. It means that I'm enthusiastic. So it's not necessarily
It's not always true. It's
right.
a guideline. And in terms of selling, you'll have a higher close rate when people are in heat. And in the stepladder marketing system, as soon as they sign up for the newsletter, that's when they were proactively searching. Every day that goes by after that is a day after they first had in mind to solve that problem. So you're going to have a little bit of a higher close rate with the people that call you right away. But my experience is that those people are sometimes also a little more impulsive and harder to keep as clients. So these are just guidelines.
Now, I know I'm an exception to the rule that way because I have a combination of impulsiveness as well as stick-to-itiveness.
You definitely do.
And not everybody does, and I totally get what you're saying.
Cool.
What about the missed appointment thing?
Well, I think that it's very important to teach people that they need to pay for missed appointments within a certain time frame. And a lot of coaches feel funny about this. This is less of an issue if you're charging on a monthly basis. I tend not to charge on a monthly basis until I've got a very well-established relationship with the client and I know they respect my time and I take advantage of that. Because if they start missing appointments, they're going to start to think that, well, they can just reschedule it another time in the month.
Right.
But they don't recognize that you scheduled your day around that. And
that's loss of income.
So I tend to prefer to charge by the appointment. Different coaches feel differently about that, and generally in the life coaching profession, people like to charge by the month. I prefer to charge by the appointment unless I know someone very, very well. On the other hand, so some coaches don't feel comfortable charging their clients for missed appointments.
I'm still not clear. Could you say why? I didn't understand why by the appointment versus by the month. What's the advantage in your mind?
If you're charging by the month, then first of all, I would never charge by the month in the first 3 or 4 months because I always want to set up a trial period with clients. And I don't want to establish too much regularity initially before I've had a chance to really study whether I'm going to be able to help them significantly. Because once you set up that regularity, it's more painful to them to break it if you have to.
So you want to have their welfare in mind.
Yeah, and I think we talked about in the mistakes that life coaches make module, so I don't want to go into that too much here.
Okay.
Financially and from a time management perspective, the reason that I prefer to charge by the appointment is that if I'm paying you $1,000 a month, and our understanding is we're going to have 4 appointments a month, and let's say my regular appointment is Wednesday at 7, and I forget one Wednesday at 7.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of a natural built-in expectation that you're going to make up that appointment for me because I'm paying you for 4 appointments a month.
See, I thought of it just the opposite. That's interesting.
How did you think of it?
I thought of, well, I'm paying a monthly fee, and if I miss the appointment, that's my loss.
That's a very mature adult way to look at it. Now, I haven't done a tremendous amount of experimenting with this, and the coaches that I've supervised that do monthly work, they are very happy with it. So this is an area where I'm giving you the best
Trial and
advice I can
error.
about, but you can try your own. But the experimenting that I did with it, I found it to be more difficult.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a very easy place to lose a client. When they miss an appointment and you try to explain to them that they need to pay for it, it's a very easy place to lose them.
They can get pissed off.
Yeah. Well, and rejected and hurt, and it reminds them that they feel like they're paying for love. And they're not paying for love, but they feel like they're paying for love.
Right. Oh, and there's some justification to that, like to feel like you're paying for getting attention, and even if it's not therapy, there's transference that happens. People feel like you're supposed to be their best friend and take care of them, and so it makes sense what you're saying. Good.
There's a number of different ways that people approach the you have to pay for missed appointments problem. And I want to go over the different ways that people do that. And then I want to say how I recommend that you do that, because this has worked exceptionally well for me.
Very good.
Many people will put it in their initial contract. You know, in life coaching, it's very important to have a signed contract so that people know that they're not in psychotherapy and how much they're going to pay for appointments, and there's a sample contract in the manual.
Good.
I think that it's really fine to have it in the manual, but I also find that when you do that people forget. And it's not really a legal situation. I mean, I suppose in the end it could be a legal situation if you wanted to sue them for it, but you never do.
Right.
It's more of a personal, empathic, and loving situation that you have to solve to teach them this without hurting their feelings too much. And pulling out the contract and saying, look, here, you signed that, is kind of not the way I recommend doing it. Here's what I do. I prefer to wait until it happens one time and assume I'm not going to get paid for that one time. This is a price that I pay for teaching and educating my clients, and it almost always happens once with everybody. I usually wait until it happens one time, and then I look for a time during their next appointment when they're pausing. Never at the end of the session, either at the very beginning of the session if it seems like they're not feeling too pressured about anything, or, you know, in the middle of the session time. Never at the end of the session, because you need to have some time to work through the reaction to it. And I ask them if it's okay if I could mention something to them. I always ask their permission to do that first to make sure that I'm maintaining the philosophy that their thoughts and feelings are first and foremost.
Makes sense. Good.
So I don't just blurt this out. I ask them if it's an okay time to mention something to them. And then I'll say something like, now, Sharon, I don't want you to pay me for this last session, because I'm not sure if I made it clear to you previously, but I wanted to let you know that I charge for any time that I've booked 48 hours in advance. So what that means is if your appointment is on Wednesday at 7 p.m., you can call me all the way up to Monday at 6:59 p.m., and you won't have to pay for the appointment if you need to cancel.
Right.
And you've noticed that I phrased that. It's almost like advertising copy. Everything is in the positive. I don't say you have to pay for missed appointments. I point out how they can work it out not to pay for missed appointments.
Right.
Because that's the benefit. So I emphasize their control and the benefits that we have to them. Now, once in a while, you'll get a client that repeatedly cancels. They'll call you at 6:59 every Monday night and cancels.
Right.
That's a sign that you're giving them too many regular sessions, and they're not perceiving enough value in the sessions themselves, so you really have to go back and reevaluate what's been happening and whether the coaching is going the way that it should. Because if the client is getting value and solving their problems and goals, then they should really be interested in making their coaching session a high priority.
Right.
So if that's not happening, that's a sign that something really needs to be looked at, and you should go back over your notes and try to figure out what it is for yourself personally before you ask them a couple of questions about it. And sometimes you can actually bring it up to the client and ask them if they're aware that 3 of the last 4 weeks they've called to cancel their appointment at 6:59 on Monday, and you wanted to know if they were aware of that and what their thoughts were about it. That can often lead to an exploration of what they need to get from the coaching that they're not getting, and you can often resolve it like that. And sometimes just bringing it to their attention is enough to stop it.
Or it might truly be, I'm thinking about when I've made the wrong decision about a coach and I didn't have the guts to quit, that I start missing appointments and go.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And it's okay if people leave.
It has to be, because they're gonna. None of us is the perfect match for every client.
Mm-hmm. There's also a few ways that you can lessen the rejection that people feel about paying for missed appointments. You can make sure that they know that you still dedicate that time to them anyway, because if you're going to charge for it, then you really have to be giving them value for it, right? So what does that mean? Well, it means that you keep the phone line open during the time when you're by the phone, so that if they remember halfway through that, they can get a hold of you. It means that you can use the time to think about them, to meditate about their problems, to do some journaling about it, to look over their notes, your notes about them, to look through their chart, if you've recorded any sessions, to go back and listen to them and see what might be going on. You want to use that time for them, and you want to let the clients know that you're doing that. They will often tell you they don't believe you.
Right.
You tell them, well, just test me. Just pick up the phone and call. Call me 20 minutes late one time. You'll see what happens. And you better be sure that you're doing it when you do that, because you'll lose the client otherwise. So those are the philosophical tips that I have to help your client to respect your time and train them to respect your time. There's a couple of logistical tips specific for life coaching that I thought we should review.
Okay.
One is to resist the urge to schedule people back to back all day long. I remember when
I remember.
You remember, right. I had 14 people in a row. I had 14 people in a row on Mondays for a while, and
I remember those 14 people.
Yeah.
Not the 14 people, those 14 people days.
You really can't take care of them all ethically and properly if you're going to do that.
You can't take care of yourself.
And
My God.
That's the issue. You're going to burn out. It's important to teach your clients how long your sessions actually are. And this usually is a conversation that occurs in the first phone call or the first appointment. People would frequently ask me how long the appointment is for. And I'll usually say, well, it's 45 minutes, but I don't have an egg timer that goes off or anything after 45 minutes. So if you're in the middle of talking about something, we can go for a couple hours.
So when did you start using that egg timer?
Some clients have difficulty ending the sessions on a regular basis, and if you notice that that's the case, then about 15 minutes before the end, you just gently mention that, Sharon, I just want to let you know we've got about 15 minutes, and if there's anything that you want my direct help about or want to ask me any questions about, I want to leave you time to do that. And then you let them know again in about 5 minutes, and then if they're still having trouble ending the session, you say, well, you can write to me. You can always write to me or leave me a message on the phone tomorrow or something like that. And
so get the hell off the phone is not a good idea? I'm sorry. And I think we've all had clients who have wanted to use the time because they have a hard time letting go. And it's because they really like you and they need and they want.
Well, and more than that, they're scared they're going to lose the connection.
Right.
And so when you tell them, you can always write to me. You can always leave me a phone message if you want. You can even say, well, I'd like it if you left me a phone message. Some people are frightened to do that. They think they're going to be overwhelmed with phone messages and calls, but it actually has the opposite effect.
I agree with you. Totally.
Those are the basics of time management for life coaching. I think that it's something that you develop over time, and I suppose what I want to warn people about is that it's harder than it sounds for the first 6 months or so.
Because you're so tempted and so enthusiastic, and you want to please everybody, you want to get it going, and then you really can burn out. And I don't know if you said this already, I was listening to what you said, but I think it's so important because it's something I don't do. Like when I'm doing my interviewing schedules, I'll be scheduled one on top of another without like a 5-minute break to go to the bathroom. And boy, I tell you, that 5-minute break makes a big difference. To go to the bathroom, get a glass of water, a cup of tea, whatever. I need that. I really need that to make the transition. And there have been times when I don't have it. And that's when I get really exhausted.
I recommend at minimum that people have 45-minute sessions and schedule their appointments on the hour. So they've got 15 minutes between each one, because that'll turn into 10 minutes between each one. If I can get people to do it, I tell them to put a half an hour between appointments instead of 15 minutes. But what happens is that early on in your career, you're eager to be making enough money to do it full time. And so you want to make the most you can out of the hours that you have.
Or you want to consolidate the day so you're done when you're done.
We find that coaches don't actually get to the point of doing that until they're charging much higher fees and are very confident in the stability of their practice and They don't feel
And they're working the amount of hours they want to work rather than overworking.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thanks, Sherry.
Thanks, Glenn.
In just 12 weeks, you can become a certified professional coach, confident in your ability and fully equipped to grow a thriving practice from anywhere or your money back. My name is Dr. Glenn Livingston, and I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about taking your coaching dreams a lot more seriously, about getting the right certification and training, and about developing the confidence to deliver stellar results time after time so your clients will accomplish their goals, others will notice, and get referred back to you. I'll hope you forgive my modesty while we talk, because my wife and I have more combined experience in both coaching and business development than virtually any other program on the market. I've personally worked with over 1,000 clients and supervised dozens of coaches and therapists. Sharon's done literally thousands of groups and team-building workshops, and together we've sold more than $20 million in consulting. We've had our previous work, research, and theories covered in major media like the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Sun-Times, ABC and CBS Radio, the Wall Street Journal, New York Daily News, and many more. So we have the confidence in our ability to train and certify you as a coach and give you the know-how to build the practice of your dreams. In fact, we're so confident, we're willing to guarantee it right through the end of the very last class. If you don't feel our training was your best choice for any reason, just show us you attended at least 3/4 of the classes and did at least 75% of the assignments. We will refund every penny that you paid. When you compare our experience, guarantee, and more affordable than most pricing, we think your choice will be clear. But if you're like most coaches, you're probably a little skeptical, maybe a lot. You see a lot of limitations and obstacles, and I'd like to talk about them with you because most of them are self-imposed. For example, you might think it's not really possible to earn a living as a professional coach. Maybe you think there's too much competition. But did you know that as of this recording, there were only about 20,000 active coaches in North America? That's less than one coach for every 15,000 people. Of course, not every one of those 15,000 people is in the market for a coach. But coaching has become ever more acceptable and interesting thanks to reality shows like The Biggest Loser, The Voice, dancing shows, singing shows, et cetera, et cetera. Every one of the contestants gets a coach, and the audience gets to see the value firsthand as they progress. More importantly, most coaches ignore the immense value of niching. There's literally hundreds of coaching niches to choose from, and when you do niche, you dramatically lower your competition and raise your odds of success. For example, where there may be 20,000 active coaches overall in North America, how many adoption coaches do you think there are? What about coaches who specialize in chocolate addiction? By the way, I could use one of those. Family business, academic achievement, and you don't have to marry any of these niches either. You just try one on to size, learn the skills, and transfer them to whatever suits your fancy later on. But here's another self-imposed limitation. Many people think it's simply not possible to earn a living as a coach. Well, you can visit becomearealcoach.com to see detailed studies which suggest the average active coach earns about $55,000 per year. Of course, there are coaches who make a lot more and coaches who make a lot less. And it would be unreasonable to assume just getting certified will automatically give you this income. Your income as a coach will depend upon many things, including the niche you choose. For example, working with affluent couples to help them adopt is likely to be more lucrative than helping disabled veterans adjust to life at home. Not any more meaningful, fulfilling, or soulful, but definitely more profitable. The environment you work in will also influence your income. Private practice versus a salaried employee, etc. The number of hours you choose to fill. Nobody says you have to work full time. The fees that you're comfortable charging. There's a lot of coaches out there that don't want to charge as much as they really could charge. The business model that you choose. In other words, individual coaching versus selling books, tapes, seminars, groups, and events for more leverage and passive income. The seriousness of the problem that you specialize in. How desperate are your clients to solve it? How meaningful and valuable is the solution? For example, it's easier to earn more as an adoption coach than a yoga coach for this very reason. And your income also depends upon how much effort you put into attracting clients. But most importantly, in our experience, your income is related to your coaching confidence and ability to produce stellar results for your clients. Or maybe the obstacle stopping you from taking your coaching dreams to the next level is wondering whether you need a professional background in therapy or counseling. But you don't, because coaching isn't therapy. So you won't get involved in diagnosing, treating, or curing any type of mental illness. And we'll teach you how to clearly draw the line and skillfully refer clients who require a licensed professional. When in doubt, refer it out is our motto. Coincidentally, many of these professionals who you refer to can become a good resource of referrals back into your network. Maybe you're not sure if you're worthy of coaching. Maybe you think you don't have enough experience, or you're just not credible enough to coach people professionally, or that you don't have the expertise. When people tell me this, I tell them that they're asking the wrong question. You see, if you're willing to put your heart and soul into helping someone, if you're willing to give them your undivided attention on a regular or semi-regular basis until they reach their goal, if you're willing to make them a priority in your life in exchange for a reasonable payment, then the real question is, you should be asking, are these clients worthy of me? Because you see, you've only got a limited amount of time, energy, and love to give these people, so you've got to protect your practice. The real question is, are they worthy of you? Maybe you don't think you have the time to become a certified professional coach, but if you can make 4 or 5 hours a week, which is under an hour a day, for just a few months, you can definitely become a certified professional coach in our program. And there are many, many ways to start a coaching practice on a part-time schedule. We know most coaches have very busy lives even before they begin. And because we actually like coaches who are out there living real lives, we work hard to accommodate them. Coaching is more about experience and the desire to share and spare than it is about book knowledge. Maybe you think you can't afford it. But our program is much more affordable than most other live interactive certification programs, and we've got financing options to suit any budget. Besides, coaching is one of the least expensive businesses to start because you can work with people all over the world via telephone, Skype, and the internet. So there's really no need for office space, rent, or other overhead. And we'll show you how to make a safe transition plan so you can carefully plan your move from another job with a great deal of confidence when the time is right. Because you are the product, this is another reason why coaching is easier to get into and less expensive, because you are the product, many of the traditional costs associated with starting a business like inventory or research and development, production cost, they just simply disappear. So, at the risk of appearing self-serving, a better question than, can you really afford to do this is, can you really afford not to do it? Finally, perhaps you think you're going to be a great coach, but you're too allergic to marketing to do anything about it. And if you feel this way, it's likely because you've been taught the wrong things about marketing. You're probably thinking of used car salesmen, cold calling, constant rejection, and constant lies. And nobody's taken the time to find out what marketing methods really suit your personality. Remember, Sharon and I have more combined experience in both coaching and business development than virtually any other certification program on the market. That means we've got the flexibility to help virtually any coach who wants it bad enough. You can check out our website at becomearealcoach.com for more details about our personal biographies. But for now, just trust me when I say if you don't like public speaking, there's no problem. If you hate making cold calls, there's no problem. If you can't even stand the idea of making a website, there's no problem because we'll show you how to market in a way that's comfortable for you. Now, by this point, you may actually be wondering what happens in the certification program itself. Again, you can visit becomearealcoach.com to read the details, but in a nutshell, our program is largely about the experience of being a coach and not the academic. Each week, you'll meet live with your instructor and your peers and have the experience of practicing that week's coaching or business development lesson with everybody in the group. You'll get detailed feedback from your master coach instructor, and you'll get additional feedback from your peers. And here's an important benefit most people don't think of. You'll get a chance to observe and learn from the other coaches in training. Then, after each event, you'll download a brief set of materials which prepare you for the following week and include an action challenge. So in short, first you practice with your peers, then you watch, read, or listen to us describe what you just experienced, and finally you do it on your own outside of class so you can integrate the learning. Practice, study, then do. It's really that simple in less than an hour a day. There's quite a bit more to know, so you'll want to visit becomearealcoach.com as soon as you can. But the most important thing to remember is that in just 12 weeks, you really can become a certified professional coach, confident in your ability, and fully equipped to grow a thriving practice from anywhere or your money back. Head on over to becomearealcoach.com now. Classes fill quickly, so please book your slot today if you're at all interested. Thanks.